Okay, so this episode's book review is going to be something a little bit different, at least a different kind of book. It's actually technically three books right here. This is the this is the BDK English Tripitaka. So, um, for those who might not know, the Tripitaka is essentially the excuse me, sorry. It is essentially the main scripture of the Buddhist religion. This is the this is the only book of scripture that the Theravada school of Buddhism consults, and for that reason, Theravada is usually considered to be the purest school of Buddhism. Um, this translation specifically is the BDK version. I'm not quite sure what BDK stands for, but it's it's quite a good translation. Um, it was actually the only translation I could find anywhere on the internet, and I'm glad I did find it because I'm glad I read it. Um, However, though, there are some. It does seem like it needs to have a bit more proofreading done. There are a number of typos uh, throughout the translation, but it communicates the message very thoroughly and very clearly. It's actually I was actually quite impressive, or I was quite impressed with the translation as it was translated by a Japanese man from Chinese into English, right? Um, I'm not. I mean, obviously I don't speak or read Pali or Sanskrit or anything like that, so I can't say for certain how accurate the translation is. But for my reading of this, it seemed to have gotten the job done very well. Um. So, uh, what next to say about this? Buddhism is something that's had a lot of influence on my life, on me personally. Um, the reason I chose to read why I chose to read the Tripitaka, outside of it being a life goal of mine to thoroughly study every major religion on the earth, outside of that, I've always felt, um, I've always felt somewhat of a strange attraction to Buddhism. I've always been appealed to the aesthetics ever since I was a teenager, and some of the little rumors or whatever you hear floating around Buddhism in the Western world, I heard a lot of those, and it just sounded very mystical and interesting to me. And throughout the years, read, I've read I don't know if I would say I've read a lot about Buddhism, but I've read about Buddhism, and I've talked with Buddhists and asked them to explain it to me. I remember when I was in high school, I took a a humanities class, and we had someone from each sect of each major religion come and teach us about their religion. We had a Zen Buddhist come by, and she was a Buddhist monk. She you could definitely tell by looking at her that she was an actual authentic, like she genuinely followed the path of Buddhism, because she shaved her head and she looked like she was on the border of insanity with the way that she spoke and her mannerisms. Um, but even with this woman's explanation of the religion, I still didn't feel like I got a complete grasp of what Buddhism was, and took me that was that was probably that was probably 4 years ago now, 4 or 5 years ago at this point, that I received the lecture from that lady. Um, and I finished reading this full Tripitaka, excuse me, back I believe either in June or May, and it's now September 1st, so it's been a couple months since I finished it. Um, but let's see. I completely lost my train of thought. Um, I think before I get into get into the contents and my thoughts and everything like that, I will say that this is a very, very dense reading. It's so it's 3 volumes. It's 3 volumes, as you can clearly see here, and each volume contains 10 sutras or chapters, which would be roughly the equivalent of what a sutra is. Um, so there's 30 sutras in total, 3 volumes. Um, as I said, it's very dense. Um, it's about 800 plus pages in total. It took me about a month and a half to read. Um, and then, as for the content itself, it's it's quite brilliant. Um, I think I think the biggest thing that I gained from reading the Tripitaka was honestly that I'm satisfied not being a Buddhist. I genuinely don't feel as though Buddhism is something that I had to convert to. Um, and I do definitely still feel some of that strange attraction, some of that strange mystical attraction to Buddhism, um, especially with Buddhist aesthetics. And a lot of the topics that are covered in Buddhism are mystical topics that are shared within Christianity. Um, and I think this is something that you'll find with most religions on Earth. But that's a discussion for another time. Um, so, what did I really like about the Tripitaka? Well, it's very, very thorough. It covers just about everything that Buddhists believe, right? It covers just about everything you want to hear and everything you don't want to hear. It's, as I said, it's very, very dense. Um, that's one of the things that I don't really like about the Tripitaka is how absurdly dense it is, right? There's one place in the Tripitaka where it's probably about 5 sutras of nothing, of absolutely nothing, but one of the disciples of the Buddha, not even the Buddha himself, but one of the disciples of the Buddha, listing off doctrine after doctrine after doctrine by the hundreds, okay? And he doesn't even explain what the doctrines are, just like, oh, and then there's the doctrine of this, the doctrine of this, the doctrine of this, the doctrine, and it's just listing it off over and over and over. And I did read through the whole thing because I'm an absolute maniac, but let me see if I can pull this up and show you. Yeah, so this sutra is called, this is Sutra 11, it's from the second volume. This sutra is called The Gradual Increase of Doctrines by One. And I'll just hold this up to the camera so you can see the pages. I hope you can read that. And if you want to just pause right there or something, and you can just look, it's like that for probably like 200 pages. It's just 200 pages of that. And it was absolutely grueling, but then the redeeming factor is that scattered throughout these 3 volumes are little absolute golden nuggets of just like pure wisdom and like pure inspiration. And I'm actually going to read one of them right here. This is probably my favorite part in the entire book. This is from the first volume, from the first sutra of the first volume. So this is one of the very first things that's declared in the Tripitaka. And I believe the name of this doctrine is something like the 12-fold causation of suffering or something like that. But essentially, the context for this is actually when the Buddha was first enlightened, and when he was sitting meditating in a deep meditation under the tree, and this is one of the doctrines that was given to him, and let's see, and it goes, when ignorance ceases, neither then are there the forces of disposition. When the forces of disposition are absent, neither is there consciousness. When consciousness ceases, neither is there mental and physical process. When mental and physical process has already ceased, neither is there the sixfold sense operation. When the sixfold sense operation ceases, neither is there sense contact. When sense contact ceases, neither is there sensation. When feeling ceases, neither is there thirst-like craving. When thirst-like craving ceases, neither is there grasping. When grasping ceases, neither is there the will to becoming. When the will to becoming ceases, neither is there birth. When birth ceases, neither is there the aggregate of suffering, such as old age and death. So that right there essentially sums up the entirety of Buddhism. This is the Buddha going in to what causes suffering, right? And to sum all that up, essentially the ultimate causation of suffering is ignorance. And from ignorance stems all of these different causations that lead to the cycle of rebirths and ultimately suffering, right? Um, And I thought when I read that I was completely astounded that it's just like the answer is just right there. That is what causes suffering, right? And there it's just it's the little golden nuggets like that that you find throughout the Tripitaka that make all the dense absolute nothing boringness completely worth it. And it's a really great read. Anyone who's interested in Buddhism, I definitely recommend reading. I mean, what else are you going to read if you're interested in Buddhism, like Alan Watts or something like? Just read the real stuff. um, yeah, and it's quite interesting. I love Buddhism. I love Buddhist aesthetics. I love the philosophy behind it. It's something that I really have like taken into my life, in my worldview at least. Um I ultimately am a Christian, but I Buddhism is in many ways like a supplement religion to me, and I oftentimes look up to the Buddha as I look to the Buddha for inspiration a lot of the time, and being a more spiritual and loving person. I've gone to I've gone to Buddhist group meditations before. I didn't really enjoy the type of people that were there very much, but a group meditation is a group meditation, and being done in the name of the Buddha as well is it's pretty special. Um, I think I'm not going to rate this book because this is a spiritual text. This is scripture, right? I don't think it's right to put a rating onto it. Um, but I do want to talk about the religion of Buddhism itself and what my thoughts are on it first. Um, so if you're not interested in my thoughts on the religion and you're just here to understand what exactly the Tripitaka is, um, which if I haven't made it clear, which I might not have honestly, the Tripitaka is essentially, as it's stated on the cover of the books, the canonical book of the Buddha's lengthy discourses. So that's what it is. It's essentially just a record of all of the discourses or arguments that the Buddha had throughout his days, and all of the teachings and all of these different things that he taught and that he did, right? So anyway, on to my thoughts of the religion itself. I think it's a very noble religion. I think the Buddha was a very, very noble man, and he was certainly one of the most Christ-like individuals to have walked the earth. Um, I wouldn't go so far as to say that he was inspired in the sense that like a prophet of God was is inspired. Um, Although I would say that he without a doubt received inspiration. I think he I think he led many more people to spiritual salvation than uh, than anyone else has aside from Jesus Christ himself, obviously. Um, and I think he led these people, at least put them on the path to spiritual salvation by teaching them essentially a lot of the same behaviors that Christ taught people, right? The Buddha was a very Christ-like person. Um, but yeah, as far as like what he was, I really don't know if I would say that he was a prophet of any sort. I think he was just a man who was looking for an answer. He was looking for an answer to a question. And that question was, why are we suffering, and how can we stop suffering? And then he got the answer to that question. Um, I've heard many Buddhists mention that the path that the Buddha walked is the highest path that any living being can walk, right? Um, which could be disputed. It could definitely be argued for, could be argued against. Um, Although I think it's quite apparent that that the Buddha that the path that the Buddha walked and the path that he laid out wasn't the single highest path. It's quite a high path. Don't get me mistaken. But there are higher paths that not only will end your suffering just the way that the path of the Buddha does, but will also do even more for you than just ending your suffering. So those are essentially my thoughts on Buddhism. It's if when I have kids, if one of them ended up converting to Buddhism and like they're actually authentic about it and they weren't just like LARPing and then like doing psychedelics on the offside, I wouldn't be upset at all. I wouldn't be upset. Um, so yeah, this trying to think if there's anything else that I ought to discuss, which I don't think there is. But yeah, this has been my review of the BDK English Tripitaka. So thank you.